Ben Gonzalez with the Texas Department of Insurance, and this is the Texas Insurance Podcast. On each episode, we look at an insurance topic, why it's important to you, and offer some tips that could help save you some money or protect your property. Today we're talking about hurricane season, which runs from June through November. We'll hear from the National Weather Service about whether busy hurricane seasons are just becoming the new normal. We'll also check in with the Texas Division of Emergency Management on what you need to do to be prepared this storm season. And finally, we'll hear from a Houston native who shares her story of 5 family members who died of carbon monoxide poisoning after a hurricane. Well, staying on theme, the 2020 hurricane season was a record breaker, cranking out 30 named storms. We recently spoke with Paul Ura, a meteorologist at our local National Weather Service office, and he warns that we may be just in the middle of a very long cycle of increased activity in the tropics. 2020 really seemed like a busy year, a very strange year. I don't know if that was because of everything else that was going on, but we ran out of letters, started going to the Greek alphabet.
Yeah, it was one for the record books. It was we had 30 named storms last year. That was a record. The previous record was actually back in 2005 when we had 28 named storms. And yes, even back then, if you remember, we went to the Greek alphabet. So we had to go to the Greek alphabet again this year. And everybody learned their lessons. Believe it or not, we're never going to go back to the Greek alphabet. They're done with the Greek alphabet. It added just too much confusion to things. So actually what they have now, they've created a whole supplemental list of names that if we run through the standard list of names for the given year, they'll actually then have a backup list of names. So
you start
no
over.
more Eta, no more Zeta, no more of those Greek alphabets. Yeah.
I just gave up at that point.
I know, right?
It's
yeah,
2020.
We had 30 named storms last year, and that was well above average. We had 5 landfalling systems just in Louisiana alone, and overall 12 landfalling systems in the United States. So, combination of the warm Atlantic waters. We still had a La Nina going on a little bit, and that sort of keeps down the upper level winds enough to where it allows the storms to have good exhaust and everything. So yeah, we had Laura, Eta, and Iota that were actually all retired. So you will never have a Hurricane Laura again. That was the one that hit Louisiana with really big storm surge around Lake Charles that really devastated the Lake Charles area.
Right. Well, are things kind of trending in that direction? Are we going to see more and more? Are storms becoming more frequent or stronger? Or is that just we're paying more attention to them? Right.
So interestingly enough, we've had 5 consecutive years now with above average hurricane activity in the Atlantic Ocean. Everything I'll be discussing is mainly the Atlantic Ocean and all the numbers and everything. In fact, I think 18 of the last 26 years have all been above average. So obviously we are seeing a trend. We are seeing a trend of more hurricanes, more tropical systems in the Atlantic. There's a couple different reasons for that. One is that we're actually in a period of time right now, a very long period of time where we're having increased activity. And that kind of goes with the Atlantic Ocean and how warm it is. There's a fancy name to it. It's called the AMO, the Atlantic Multi-Decadal Oscillation, for all of you playing at home there.
That's why we get you here.
So the AMO has been in a warm phase, meaning the Atlantic Ocean has been warm the last 30 plus years. And so yes, we've had a lot of hurricane activity over that time period. So as long as that sticks around, we're probably going to have above average sort of seasons. We don't know when it's going to go away. They tend to last about 20 or 50 years. So
50 years? Wow.
Yeah. So at least as far as what we can tell with this sort of oscillation that we have. So that's obviously an issue. So as long as we're, it's kind of like with forecasting. If you keep having above average years, you pretty much keep forecasting above average years. That you're not going to go and buck the system and try to forecast something different like that. So that is going for increased numbers, and so we think that trend is going to continue with the warm ocean and the atmosphere and everything else. I just don't see that really kind of stopping anytime soon. We've had plenty of examples in the past, and you know this, of a very low named storm year, right, where we only have maybe 5 or 6 named storms, but one of them is a Cat 5, or one of them is a massive hurricane that impacts a certain coastal community. So, everybody should be preparing the same way every year, which is more than last season. right? You make sure you have your evacuation kits. You make sure you know where you're going to be going. You make sure you have, your cell phone apps and everything that comes into being well prepared for a hurricane season is kind of what a person should that's how they use this information. It's a reminder, right? It's a reminder that hurricane season is coming. It doesn't really matter how many numbers are out there because, all those 17 named storms could be in the middle of the Atlantic and not affect the U.S. at all. Whereas 10 of them maybe could, right? And 10 of them make landfall in Texas. I hope not. Let's hope
Right.
Texas is spared again this year. We had two minor storms kind of last year, Hannah and then Beta, that one was a hurricane, Hannah was a hurricane, but overall our impacts to Texas were much lower. And obviously we needed a break from Harvey.
A lot of the damage from Hurricane Harvey was from flooding, and flooding is not covered by most standard home insurance policies. You actually need a separate flood insurance policy. Gabriella Stermoli at the Texas Division of Emergency Management told us there are steps you can take right now to help prevent damage from floodwaters. She also covered what should be in your family's go kit if you ever do need to evacuate.
So these go kits are really important. It's something you can keep in an easy to find area, grab and go. And it should contain things like potable water and non-perishable food items to sustain you and your family for up to 3 days. It should include things like flashlights and batteries and solar chargers for your phones. It should contain copies of important documents like your homeowner's insurance policies and your flood insurance policies, and medications for your families. And don't forget to plan for your pets too. Your pets are going to need a lot of those same items. So make sure that your pets are accounted for in your family's plans.
Is there anything we should be doing now that can help strengthen our homes maybe and try to mitigate some of the damage that storms can cause?
Yes. Storm-proofing homes can range from the very expensive to really no cost or low cost renovations. So applying coatings and sealants to cracks and foundations and windows can help prevent floodwater and stormwater from coming in. Installing check valves on all the pipes that come into your homes. Ensuring the gutter runoff is pointed away from your home and not pointed at your neighbors either, because we don't want to flood them as well. So make sure that it flows in an appropriate direction. Raise your appliances like washing machines and dryers up off the floor. There's platforms, or use wooden pallets or concrete blocks, things like that to elevate those appliances that can be damaged. If the storm is coming, if it's imminent or flooding has already started, clear out your gutters to let the stormwater flow more freely. Use sandbags to block any gaps that might be coming into your home. Move your rugs, furniture, and electronics to a higher elevation, maybe the top of a closet, or run things upstairs, things that can get permanently damaged. If the water is elevating swiftly, know where your emergency gas shutoff is, know where your electrical panel is, and shut off all your electricity as the water can rise very swiftly and kill your electrical system if it hits some of your outlets. Photograph and video. So this is very important. Photograph and videotape any flooding to document and defend your position for a claim with a flood insurance provider. So make sure you have photos of before and after that can help bolster your claims.
When we talk about storm preparedness, we also need to include what happens after the storm has passed. Every year, thousands of people end up in the hospital, and hundreds die from carbon monoxide poisoning. Many of these happen after storms have knocked out power, and people turn to their cars or portable generators for some backup power. Houston native Shaletta Brundage had family in Louisiana when Hurricane Laura came ashore. She says they survived that storm, but didn't realize they were still very much in danger.
So when Hurricane Laura came through, most of our family evacuated, but the matriarch of my father's family, my Aunt Rosa Lewis, she's 80 plus years old. She had Alzheimer's and dementia. And so her daughter and her daughter's husband, who are her caretakers, decided that they would stay behind. They have a generator, they had water, they boarded up the house, they had food. And so they felt like they were in a good position to ride out the storm. And so they did successfully ride out the storm. Everybody talked to them the next day after Laura blew through, the historic storm. And they had a couple of windows busted out. And that was pretty much it. Another relative, my father's brother, who also rode out the storm, had more severe damage to his home. And so my cousin Kim and her husband Chris invited my uncle over to their house because they had a generator, so they had lights and they could use the electricity. They could plug up the cell phones. You know how it goes,
Yeah, so the power was out for everybody in the area?
The power was out for everybody. I mean, the electrical grids were completely taken down. And so with that storm, and so my uncle went to my cousin's house. So in one house, the night after the storm blew through, because again, everybody was fine from the actual storm, it was my father's sister, her husband, my father's brother, and my father's niece and nephew. So 5 family members. And when they went to bed, they had the generator in the attached garage. They had a garage door open, and then they went to sleep. And they never woke up because a strong wind came through, blew the garage door closed, and then the fumes from the generator seeped into the house, and they died from carbon monoxide poisoning.
Everybody that was in the home?
Everybody that was in the home. 4 of the relatives died immediately. And my uncle-in-law, my aunt's husband, he died just a short time later.
Do you know if there was a carbon monoxide detector in the home?
There was not a detector in the home, no.
Yeah. So what have you learned about carbon monoxide poisoning since that tragedy last year?
I learned that carbon monoxide poisoning is real and it needs to be taken seriously. And we need to educate ourselves and get detectors in our homes. When that happened to my relatives, I had a carbon monoxide detector in my home, but look what I did. I took it out because it was beeping. And my husband was at work and I didn't have time to put batteries in. I've got 4 kids, and all of a sudden there's this beeping noise. That's in addition to the kids screaming, mom, and the phone ringing, and the cell phone beeping, and them playing recorder, and the teachers are coming through the Zooms, and I'm like, no more noise. So I unplugged the carbon monoxide detectors and put them in the garage because they were beeping and needed new batteries. Completely forgot to tell my husband to change the batteries. And it wasn't until I lost 5 relatives in one night, 2 generations of my family gone in an instant, that I went into the garage and started digging for those carbon monoxide detectors because they're life-saving.
Generators aren't the only source of carbon monoxide poisoning after a storm. People have also become sick from turning a car on in a garage to warm up or charge their phones, gas appliances that malfunction, or blocked vents that force dangerous carbon monoxide back inside the home. Some warning signs of carbon monoxide poisoning to be aware of include a sudden onset of fatigue or sleepiness, headaches, dizziness, or blurred vision, and finally, shortness of breath. Remember, you're not going to see or smell carbon monoxide. That's why it's so important to have working carbon monoxide detectors throughout your home. Well, that's it for today. We have more tips about hurricane preparedness online, as well as what to do if you get storm damage and need to file an insurance claim. Visit our website at tdi.texas.gov. You can also call our helpline at 800-252-3439 to ask your insurance questions. And remember to subscribe to the Texas Insurance Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, so you don't miss out on this important information. We'll talk to you next time.